Good morning. So today we're going to move on from fruits and vegetables and gardening a bit to another aspect of homesteading. Let's talk about raising your own meat. Um, Meat chickens are one of the quickest ways to get your own food on a homestead. So I want to talk about how to raise them yourself. And for those of you that are already being like a little squeamish about processing the chicken at the end of the life cycle, that that concern can be mitigated through finding a processor to do it for you. Just because you're raising your own meat chickens does not mean you have to be the one butchering them. And I know it's a little uncomfortable to start off this way, but I know that can give some people some apprehension. But that is how our food is created. That's how meat is created. And the most important thing is to humanely treat your animal through its life and then help it have a humane end. With that said, let's get started into what it's like to raise your own meat chicken and be sure that the meat your family is consuming is hormone-free, antibiotic-free, and actually flavorful versus the corporate slop we're getting from big corporations and big meat. So for your first flock of chickens, what you need to do is pick the breed that you would like to start with. Everyone's pretty familiar with this white breed. It's a Cornish Cross. They were developed to produce meat. These animals are insane in how quickly they grow, how well they convert feed, and that manifests a couple other problems, which we'll get into later. But this is the Cornish Cross. Um, your other option for the first chicken is a Red Ranger, and they're similar to a Cornish Cross. They are developed to grow quickly as well, just not quite as quickly. They do get a little bit bigger than Cornish Crosses. Um, so again, it's kind of what you're going for. The Cornish Cross will grow much quicker. It will reach weight way quicker. It will use less food to get there, but you've got some cons to counter. It's going to have health issues. They grow too quick. If you don't restrict their feed, they will have leg and heart issues just because they grow faster than those organs grow and their bones grow. So something to remember. They also are not going to be the type that goes around and scratches in the grass and eats bugs and finds food on their own. They want the food put right in front of them and they will sit there and eat. If that's not what you're into, if you're into a meat that's going to end up with a little bit more flavor and a chicken that's a little bit more dual purpose, they'll actually go out and forage. The Red Rangers may be a bit right for you. They do take longer at 9 to 12 weeks, so 25 to 30% longer than the Cornish Cross. There are a little bit higher feed costs. They're not exactly one-to-one for how much longer you're raising it because, again, the Red Ranger is eating some of its own food. It's out foraging and it's not growing quite as quickly, so it's not eating as much feed in weeks 5 through 7 that the Cornish Cross is eating because it doesn't need to. But these birds are amazing. 1.5 to 1.8 pounds of chicken feed is going to give a pound of growth on the bird, and that is just insane. No other meat species is even going to come close. So now let's get into how you're going to house these chickens if you've not housed them before. So there needs to be two components of housing. The first is the brooder, which is when the baby chicks are quite young, 1 to 3 weeks. And then the next is the coop that they're going to be in the rest of their life. So the brooder is important, and here's a picture of it. It's important because these little chicks, they need a mother hen, essentially, and that's what you're building for them. The heat lamp provides the heat for them because they are not able to generate enough body heat for themselves. So they need a lamp providing heat at about 95 degrees. And then they also need feed and water readily available. It's important to keep this area dry. If it gets wet and messy, the chicks' legs are a little bit weak and they can splay out and do permanent damage to their tendons and nerves and cause very severe adverse effects to them. So we want to make sure we have good dry bedding. You notice this container has rounded edges. That's also important because in a corner, all of these chicks could be huddling under that light and the one in the corner could be trapped and not able to breathe and need to get out, and it can't. So with rounded edges, it makes huddling and the danger of getting suffocated by the flock mates much less. Water is also important. Raising that water up a little bit would be more beneficial because then it would get less dirty. Right now, chickens forage and scratch, and they will throw all sorts of sawdust and manure into that water. So raising it up a little bit would be beneficial, and just making sure we're cleaning that out every day. Once they get out of that brooder, then they need to go into a grow out coop. So we've got lots of options. You can do a permanent structure where they're always inside, or it's got a fenced in run. You can be a little bit, what do I want to say, creative with this and use your space appropriately. The other option is a mobile chicken tractor, and this is just a bottomless pen that you move to fresh pasture every day for those chickens to eat and forage through. That's a pretty easy option. Something that I do want to really, really hammer home, though, is despite the name, chicken wire is not the best thing for keeping chickens in. A raccoon can rip that chicken wire right apart and get in and kill all of your chickens, and they don't even care how wasteful they'll be. They'll eat one bite out of each one. So let's use 1/2-inch hardware cloth when designing their cages so we don't have any unwanted pests coming through and destroying the food we're trying to have for our family. So a feeding plan. When those chicks are in that brooder, they need a higher protein feed. They're growing quickly. They need a high octane fuel. So we're looking at 22 to 24% protein. And another thing that this chick starter could have that would be beneficial is some medication in it. And I know I was just talking about how we want to make antibiotic-free food and all of this other stuff. But chickens are very susceptible to coccidiosis and other intestinal parasites. So we're just going to put a tiny little bit of amperilium in their chicken feed, and that will help make it so when they encounter these parasites, they've got a small level of immunity, so that way they can handle the small infections they're getting. The amount of medication in this feed is very, very tiny. So it's what we use. It's what I would recommend using, but you can also get non-medicated feed if that's really what you're interested in, is being a purist on that spot in terms of antimicrobials even for your chickens. So after the starter, they're going to go into their grower finisher diet. And this is just a little bit lower protein content, think 18 to 20%. And it's still geared towards packing on that muscle of those animals. 18 to 20% is still pretty high protein. It's just not the 22 to 24 that we're feeding those baby chicks. I mentioned earlier when we discussed the two breeds, and need to discuss it again, but for those Cornish crosses, you really should be removing the feed in the evening, or making sure you're only feeding them enough that they're going to clean up throughout the day and not have any that you need to pull back at night. And the reason you're doing this is they are designed to eat. And that means that they don't know how to stop, they don't know how to self-regulate, and they will eat quicker than their heart can grow. And their heart can't keep up for pumping the blood through all the muscles and tissue that's being put on so quickly. And they will literally have heart attacks and die. It's called flip over disease. So 12 hours on, 12 hours off. And if it's not the heart that's a problem, it'll be their legs. The legs are not going to develop quick enough to support them going from ounces to 6 pounds in 6 weeks unless we restrict them and say, hey, only eat 12 hours a day. Meanwhile, the rangers are better at self-regulating, and if you want, you can leave food out for them 24/7. The thing with 24/7 feeding is it does make them a little bit more wasteful. So if you're concerned with efficiency there, the Red Rangers aren't going to be hurt pulling their feed at night either, or making them clean it up, only giving them enough to eat throughout the day. Now let's get to processing. So processing is a little bit of a touchy subject. If you don't want anything to do with this, you can hire a processor. You can take your chickens in and have someone process them for you, so you don't have to worry about this. But if you're interested in doing the entire process yourself, it's not incredibly difficult. there's just a lot of specialized tools you need. So let's talk about a couple of them. A killing cone, boy, sounds barbaric, but it's basically a cone that you have that filters the bird so its head falls through the bottom. So you have its head right there. It can't flap. It can't scratch at you. It really can't peck at you. And then you're going to pull the head down and you're going to take a very sharp knife and you're going to cut the head off. It is one of the most humane ways to process a chicken. Its blood will all pump out right there. It's very quick and painless. The nerves are all gone. It's the best way to do it. After you do that, you would scald the chicken. So you're going to have a pot of really hot water that you just dip it in. And what you're doing there is you're loosening the feathers so you can pluck them out. You can either hand pluck them or there are options. There's a bit that you can put on a drill that does it. Never tried that before. There's also a machine you can put it in that has like rubber fingers that twirl around and pull off the feathers. You can also do it old school and just pluck them yourself. You're just going to have to realize that's a bit more time consuming. And then finally, you'll need an evisceration station, which is where you pull out the intestinal tract and get rid of that. There are some parts of the offal that you can save, but basically you're cleaning that chicken out and you're removing any intestinal contaminants that would degrade the quality of the meat as we're storing it and further processing it. Once you've ve got it processed, clean it, and then you can further cut it up into the cuts that you want to use, leave it as a whole bird and just freeze it that way. But you've now got your finished product. And that is how we raise meat chickens. It's a great way to get started. It's a great way to start growing your own meat in addition to your own fruits and vegetables, and moving yourself one step closer to being self-sufficient in all components of life. And further than that, just knowing where your food comes from. And after you've had your first chicken or two that way, you'll be hard pressed to go back because the flavor profile is completely different. Even those Cornish crosses that you grow yourself are not going to compare to the packaged chicken in Walmart sitting in its chicken juice that has no flavor. So enjoy the process and get you and your family one step closer to providing for yourself. Take care, everyone.